Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name's Matt Lehman, and I am the streamer on this stream, and we work on Django apps. We're going to continue on the homeschool application that I've been building over all of this course of streams, and work on some more modeling stuff, finish up some stuff we were working on last week, and go ahead and start exposing that in the user interface, hopefully, with any luck. And that's the plan. Before I get going on that, though, I do want to thank the patrons who support me on Patreon. So I want to say thank you to Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Patrick, Eric, Philip, Miguel, Peter, and to the newest patron of Shivan. Thank you very much for your contributions. It's really helpful. If you want to support me and join that list of people, you're welcome to do so. I have an account at patreon.com/mblayman, and the money basically goes to support some of the work that I do for the Django community. So let's get into the project today. You're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. And if you're coming at this from YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. It will help me be found by others. Appreciate that. We're working on making breaks work for different students. The way this app works currently is that when someone is running their school, if they create a break in the schedule so that that it can represent like a holiday or something like that, it only works for the whole school. And what came clear from some of my customer input is that should be possible for individual students within the homeschool. And this is important because some students might have certain activities that they take the day off of school, and you want to be able to just have that apply to that particular student. So over the last few streams, we've been working on extending this model to have a new many-to-many field, a new table relation that will map school breaks to students, which will allow this more specific kind of filtering. And we were working on the API change that we had to do to kind of plumb all of this modeling change through. We talked through some of the data migration aspects of this. And I think where I left it last time was there were a couple more tests to write. And so we're going to come back to those and finish this off. I need to find the name of the branch. So we'd put this work on a different branch, which I don't typically do for this app since it's just me. I typically work from the main branch. But for this project, since it was going to be kind of long running, I decided to put it on something else. And that turned out to be beneficial today because it's the first of the month and I've got Dependabot set up to do package upgrades and stuff. So I did a lot of that this morning, and that would have conflicted with if I had a work in progress here. So sometimes branches can be a really good thing. Okay, so let's run the tests. And I think there were a couple that were failing still. And whoops. Super. So I have upgraded some local packages, and one of those is hijack. So let's merge the master branch back into this branch to bring everything up to date, and that should solve that problem because there was some stuff that I fixed there. Okay, so let's try running the test suite again, and hopefully it will. Why are you not working? Okay. Go to the master branch, pull from here. There we go. Okay. I know what I did. I pushed it up into a separate branch. Okay. Yada, yada, yada. Let's do this one more time. Let's check out that student branch. And now merge in the master branch, which will bring up the code changes that I was missing. There we go. This user's admin, that was the problem area. Now we should be able to run PyTest and see what's broken. And if with any luck, it's just, I think, two tests. Both of them are related to query counts. With this change that we made to look for school breaks, there has to be a lookup for per student. And that with some of these tests where I'm looking for query counts would have gone from one query to look for all the school breaks in one fell swoop to now two, because the test is probably using 2 students. I recognize that is naturally technically an n+1 problem. If I'm looking up all of the school breaks per student, that's going to expand linearly if you have more students. But since the number of students is typically capped in a family, I don't know families that are even the biggest are kind of pushing it if they have 6 or 7 kids. So I think it's reasonable to allow this to go through. I did mention briefly at the end of the stream that there are ways that we could optimize this and redo this, but I'm not going to do that right now. I think it's reasonable to be where it's at. So let's go fix these tests. This test week has schedules and test weekly, and then I think that's enough to like review it. We'll do a quick PR to review the final diff and see everything that we did in one fell swoop. And then I think we're finally in a position to actually turn that around and make that available to the app. Sorry, that wasn't very clear. Make that available through the app user interface so that we can actually start putting this feature to work, because it's just a data model change right now, and the users actually can't do anything with that. So let's go to this particular test, and that is one of these two. I suspect it's this one. Yep. So down here somewhere is a decorator or a context manager that is asserting on the number of queries. And I did this because this dashboard view is one of the biggest, most complicated views in the application, and I didn't want any unknown problems to just run away with me and have that be not performant. So I am accepting the number of queries here, and this is starting to inch up to an area where I'm less and less comfortable with it, but I'm still trying. Hey Sparksy, welcome. Thanks for joining in. So we're going to finish up these 2 test failures, and then we'll keep going. The other one was a test weekly view. There's only one of those, and here's the query count. So this was, I think it was, yeah, 19 to 20. Okay. Now let's rerun this particular file. Make sure all the tests pass. And Sparksy, if you have any questions, that's what I'm here for. So feel free to ask away. That goes for anybody, of course. The chat is open. I just ask that you be kind. People mostly are. And happy to chat about all sorts of Django stuff, not just this particular topic for this app. The app I use kind of as a basis for conversation, but sometimes we go off on quite a tangent. So let's do this. Let's commit this change. Fix query counts on dashboard tests. And that should do that. Now we should be able to create a new branch up on GitHub and create a pull request. Now it's a little bit weird to create a pull request when I am the only developer. I have done this in the past though. There's actually a time in my career when I was like the sole developer, and I would use GitHub PRs, and like it kind of mentally helps me shift into a different viewpoint and think about it from a reviewer's perspective if I was reviewing somebody else's code. It's also sometimes just useful to get one place to see the whole diff. Cool. Sponge mode is a good mode to be in sometimes. So we're going to push, and we're going to push to the origin, and we'll give it the same branch name. And the -u is if we need to make changes here locally, it just means that the next time I do a git push, which is what my GP shortcut is, it will push directly to that branch without having to specify the branch, the remote branch again. Okay, so we want to follow this link to go ahead and create a pull request. And let's rename this to something meaningful so the future me can know what the heck I was talking about. Add data modeling for school break student filtering. That's really what we're doing here. I don't think we need a description on this one. I think that'll be sufficient for me. If I was on a bigger team, I'd probably put more information there, but this is not me, so that's fine as is. Deployments, what is that? This branch has not been deployed. I don't know what that's all about. What would be deploying this? That's curious. How can I find that out? I don't want to. Here, I'm going to go into secret mode just for a minute, just in case. I don't think there's any secret settings that I'm going to reveal here, but I don't know what deploy stuff it's talking about. All right, I'm getting distracted. Let's go back to the pull request. I'll figure that out later. Okay, so the test, so CI is running, so it's going to run the test. It's not a very huge PR to review, so we'll take a quick look at it. And we've got our queries updates. This is the thing we just made. And, oh, maybe there's some stuff that we still have to do. So the 434 is the issue number that we're working on here. And the fact that there's still a to-do there is indicative that I didn't complete this all the way. So we need to think about that. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. We've got is break day. We worked through this logic last time. Is break for everyone. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Ah, right. Okay. Yes, I'm starting to remember what was left undone now. So when we changed the app last time, we were trying to show what would happen when some amount of, like when all of the students have a break day. I wanted to display a simplified version of the page, of certain pages, so that there's one call to action. It's very clean UI, and there's nothing to see. There's a new set of states that are opened up with this change. Now that we have a possibility of having one student have school for a day and one not, what I want to do is, what I have to do actually, is to be able to show, okay, this person has a break at this time and this person doesn't, and that is some of the template state that is not represented yet, which I think is what some of these to-dos are still about. So I'm not going to spend too much time looking at this diff yet because I don't think we're done. So I don't think it's fruitful yet to go through this. So let's go back through those test 434s to get to the right issue number and make sure we're addressing them. I probably should have started here, but whatever. I think the other thing that we're going to find is, I bet CI is going to break because it probably doesn't have enough coverage, which is what one of those tests just indicated. But let's go over to here. It's not done yet. So let's try running it locally while it's figuring that out. So if we run it with coverage, I suspect we'll see a test failure. And this takes about a minute to get it going. I'm running every once in a while. While that's running, let's talk about something. In the make file, so what I just ran was a coverage target, and if you look at this command closely, you can see that it's running with n of 2, and that's the number of processors that are being applied to run the test suite. So it's dividing the test suite into half between these two processes. And you can see in this thing, I've done a little bit of analysis here, and the interesting part about PyTest, and specifically when you're using this xdist plugin, the xdist plugin is what allows you to do parallelism. It's PyTest xdist, I believe, and it lets you specify a number of things, and you can see, curiously, like more cores isn't necessarily always better. In this setup, when I said auto to allow it to use 8, that was actually the slowest run, which was a little bit shocking. And even between 4 and 2, it was 43 versus 39 seconds. So that's pretty weird, right? Like what's going on? Well, it turns out that what you may have actually noticed when this started up is it just sat right there for a minute. And what PyTest has to do is when it starts, it creates two processes. And the processes are going to be like the worker processes that are actually running the test. There's a sort of a main control process, a primary process, and that's going to aggregate all the results together. But the two processes fork off and start running. When they run, they have to figure out what tests are available in the test suite. And so they have to do something called collection. And for reasons that I don't understand, I've tried to look at the PyTest project before, collection has to run per worker process. It can't run at the main process and then fork out and just have that memory state already available. For some reason, it has to run per worker. And that overhead, that's where the overhead is. That process of doing collection seems to, for whatever reason in my case, I have not done the deep analysis on it, there's more overhead per number of processes that you have. And when I have 4 running processes, that overhead actually dominates in the parallelism. So even though once the 4 processes start running, they can run quickly, there's that overhead of collection interrupts the speed benefit, which is why there's been this weird balance. So what will happen though is over time, I ran this back when there were 445 tests, and now there are 501. So my test suite size is increasing. So I should periodically check this to see how fast it's going to be. That run said it was 56 seconds. So, there might be a benefit to switching this now to 4. I don't know. Actually, just for curiosity's sake, let's try it and see what happens. And if it adds the benefit, and if the overhead is overcome, then maybe it's worth it. So we're going to switch this to 4, and let's try make coverage again. We'll see how it behaves differently. Actually, before we do that, let's baseline this. Just kind of go through how I did this. So we're going to start with 2, and the difference this time is I want actual wall clock time, because this number might be deceptive. It's what PyTest thinks, but remember, PyTest is a process that has Python startup time, and this number is calculated only once PyTest can figure out what's going on. So it's not the true test of time from all the loading. So what I like to do instead is use the actual time command that's built into the shell. And when you run time with a command, you put some command after it, it'll tell you, by itself it tells you a bunch of stuff. But when you run it with a command, it'll tell you how much user time and system time and total time are used and to run. So you can see that the ls command took 7 thousandths of a second. So if we do this again with make coverage, we can see a realistic measure of, and we're going to discover is 56 seconds, is that actually accurate? So this will be a fun little experiment, and then we'll get back to what we're trying to do with Django. Hopefully it's interesting to me. I can understand if it's not interesting to you, but I find it fun to kind of dig in and optimize things sometimes. The other benefit, I suppose, is that, well, I guess I don't know how many processors the CI system has available. So it may not be beneficial for CI on GitHub, but it could be, and it could make my pushes up to GitHub go faster too, to prove that things are working. The other part that slows this down is that I'm running my test with coverage on, which does slow things down quite significantly. All right, so here we go. Yeah, here you can see the difference. So this is reported as 57 seconds basically, but the real total wall clock time was 58.5. So there's a 1.5 seconds that PyTest just didn't even know about. So now let's try it again with 4 processors. Oh, this is a good question of how swamped. So I'm running it on starting to run an older computer. I actually don't remember how many CPUs I have. I think I have 8, which is why I picked 8 on the last time, but okay. And OBS, and there's a bunch of fighting going on. So this is not a pure perfect benchmark test, just to be clear. If we wanted to do real benchmarking, I certainly would not have OBS on and be streaming, and have video encoding and audio encoding and all those things. Those are, I'm sure, no doubt disrupting the results here. But it's probably, since we're doing an apples-apples comparison between both of these are running at this time, it's probably good enough. So now we've got it with n of 4, and we'll try it again. And if it gets better than 58.5 seconds, then maybe it's worth changing. And it would show that even though there's a setup time for 4 processors, the total number of tests of 500 has outweighed that setup time cost and has value. And if you, as your projects grow or you're working on a team, this is a good way to like make your CI process faster. In fact, I just did this at work. We switched from a huge suite, tens of thousands of tests, and switched from running with 16 processors to like 36, and cut test time roughly in half, which is pretty cool. So I know for a fact that given a large enough suite size, it will do the right optimization. It's just a question of, is the suite size large enough? And I kind of wish that PyTest would show a breakdown of how long that setup time was versus the actual test execution time. Here we are with 4, and nope, slower still. Someday I'm going to dig into like, why the heck does this collection go so much slower by the number of processes? But not today. So there you go. More is not always better. Measure, measure, measure. Okay, let's get back to the actual problem. Well, I think we've solved one of the to-dos as a side effect. Notice what this says. There's 100% statement coverage. This function says I have to test this comment because I'm sure what I thought at the time was I needed to test both this path and this path. And I don't think I need to do that anymore because we're testing both of these lines. So let's just get rid of that and move on. Okay. Here we are. This is the Marky05. Welcome. Hello to you too, or hi to you too, I guess. What is up with this one? So remember, if you haven't been at previous streams, this API is a new one, this get break API, and we are modifying it to include students. I think it's interesting. You can be the judge of that. I'm working on a homeschool application, and this is a Django app. We're working on making the application work so that school breaks, in other words, vacation days or holidays, can be filtered to a specific student in the school. Current version applies to all students all at the same time, and we're trying to add a new functionality there because that's been requested by the customer. And I've got a PR up and it's mostly done, but there is still a little bit left to do here with some to-dos that I've got still in this code. So that's what we're going through right now, cleaning up the to-dos. And once we finish that, then we might be able to get to some of the user interface stuff that's related. All right, so my problem is I don't remember this chunk of code. And so we'll have to see what the heck my brain was thinking when I wrote this down initially, which I did on the stream, so we could go back and reference it, but I don't have time to do that. Oh, cool. Yeah, hopefully you'll learn a little bit of Python along the way. That is definitely why I'm here. If you have any questions, fire away. We use this project as something to chat about and focus on, but happy to explain things. I've been known to do that on occasion. Okay, what is the context for this function? Build week dates. So that's by here. Is this anywhere else? It's in a couple of places. Where are we? We're in the view. Okay, let's take a look at the app so you all know what we're looking at. I'm gonna fire up the app. And so you have a bit of context. Here is the application. Whoops. Well, looks like we need to run the migration. So let's do that first. Okay. Now let's return to this page. So here's the app. This is the dashboard view, and this is the view that we are looking at right now with this chunk of code where we have this to do. Dashboard view is like this core view of the app. It's kind of home base for seeing what's going on with the school schedule. Let's put another break on here so we actually can look at an example of this. So we're going to go to the school year. We had a break last week, I'm pretty sure. But we'll put one here. We'll just drop one right on the second. So we'll say 9/2/21 and 9/2/21. Okay, so now we've got a break here. If we go back to the schedule, this is what we're trying to deal with. Eventually, we'll be able to separate this so that that page that you just saw. Actually, let me outline my whole thoughts on how this will ultimately look. So there's this break page. You can go add a new break here, or you can edit a break once it exists. This is the page we just saw. Ultimately, below this description and above the button, so we're going to space it out, we'll have a thing that is a checklist or a bunch of checkboxes that says students, and it will have, in my case with my sample data, Mark and Faye as the two students, and there will be checkboxes clicked by default. And then unclicking them will make a break just apply to a particular student. Once that is done, then back over here, you would see scheduling activity for the student that doesn't have a break and a break day for the one that does. Hopefully that's pretty clear. Right now, this view, I don't think is factoring in that student logic. So I think that was the problem, and I think that's the comment with the to-do. So we have to get in here, and we have to modify this place where the breaks are calculated and called, and use that to help determine whether something shows up as a break or not, which might affect like the context of this data. In fact, let's take a quick look at what that context is. So we want to turn on Debug Toolbar. So I've got that turned on. I made that possible to turn on with an environment variable for my app. This is not the default behavior of Debug Toolbar, so don't think you can go and install Django Debug Toolbar and that will work right away. Although if you are curious, you're welcome to take a look at the code, and it's all up here and open for anybody to look at. So there you go. But over here, nope, over on the app, if we refresh this page, now the Debug Toolbar is running, we can expand it. And so this is what Debug Toolbar provides you. It gives you the ability to like get some insight about how your application is running and all of the stuff that it's querying, all of the timings and all that stuff. It's available here, which is a pretty cool tool. The thing that I want to look at the moment is in this templates section. So this is cool for any of you to know. You can go into templates, and then initially this doesn't seem very useful. And I find this to be really hidden, and that's unfortunate. But if you take a closer look at this, you can see there's this toggle context. And the reason I find this unfortunate is because there's so many templates that get loaded as part of this, but this is the context that 99% of the time you probably care about. It's like the context of the actual view you're trying to render, the template that you're trying to render. So this is all the data that is going into this building out this particular request. And you can see that all of the data to bring up this whole complicated table structure, there's a lot of stuff that goes in here. A lot of stuff that I can't talk through today all entirely, but the breaks are part of that. So if we look at this, we can see that schedules is a list, and each item in this schedules list is broken down per student, and you can see that courses is one key, but if we scroll down, you'll see that the student is one part. So a schedule is a set of courses that are per student. And then if you look a little bit further in this, then you see that there's a breakdown per course. It's a list of courses. And then there is the set of days. And the days is information about what to display, what not to display, what's complete, what's incomplete, so on. But importantly, part of that is the school break. And so you can see that this is, what is this? This is the course science, and here's Monday through Friday, and school break is none on most of those days. But here is an example where the way this is shown is that a school break is populated on Thursday, where we added the break. So what we need to do is make sure that that the school break that gets populated in this context is filtered appropriately to this right student. And I think that's what that to-do is for. So right now, yeah, that's what's going on. Right now, this school break is doing a lookup. And by saying student equal none, what that's doing is saying, give me any school break. This is something we talked about in the design of this API, but this is not right. What we really need to do is to have the case where it is per student, but notice that there is no student in this method. So that's information that we need to get from somewhere else. So let's look up and see, there should be access to a student somewhere in this. And if it's not here, then we're going to have to go up even higher. Eventually, there are students somewhere in this process. Yeah, because there's this method here. Well, is there? Curious. This is the building of the week. Oh, okay. This is not what I thought. So I think the logic here. So there's two parts to this. Okay. All right. Let's back up. Rewind the train. That doesn't make any sense. This is actually the problem area that we're about to deal with. So this schedule stuff and the breaks that are here are probably already done. There's no more to-dos. And look, you can see that this is the get schedules method that's part of this view, and it's adding to the context. And if you're new to Django, and Mark-E05, it sounds like you might have been new to Django. Context is the data that gets mixed in with a template, and a template is a bunch of HTML, and it has essentially placeholders for you're going to put dynamic data here. So you take data from your database, you take a template, and you take the database data, you put it in the context, and you smash the two things together, and that's what actually renders the page. Okay, good. Glad you're not coming this totally cold. I didn't want to throw you under the bus if like it was you'd never done any of this stuff before. So the context that we're working with has the schedule problem solved for the student, but there's two aspects of this rendering, and the part that's relevant here is that the top of this table, the actual date labels, are separate from the course data. So the courses know that there's a break. In other words, the courses know that these cells are going to be filled in yellow. But the part that we have to solve is the header part is not part of the schedule. So those week dates have to know whether it's a break or not too. So it's still the same problem that we need to get student into that header calculation area, but yeah, we just have to figure out where that's going to go. So I think what I want to do, surely there's a student somewhere. So let's just assume that we can get that. And Oh man. Now I'm second guessing myself, because check this out. Let's look at that context again. So remember, the context for this is to describe what shows up at those headers. And here is one set of 5 dates listed right here, right? And those are the week dates. That set, I'm sure, is iterated over twice in order to generate this header row here and this header row here. So now we have this like new problem that we didn't have before, where now the header row is specific to the student. And so what we have to put in the context is no longer what? It's no longer just this. It's really like we need to kind of push the header up into the schedule. I don't like that, because it's this is very much just data about this. It's kind of the data level of this, and this week date stuff is the presentation of that data. So it feels a little weird to me. But maybe I can convince myself it's the right thing to do. Because there are the two approaches we could take that I can see is either we put this header data into this schedules structure somehow, or we flip this thing around and have it be week dates, but it's like a dictionary keyed by student and has a list of week dates per student, which could work, but I'm not thrilled about that, because it's of what it will mean in the template rendering. And I think maybe it's time to illustrate that, how that's rendered right now, just so that it becomes clear why that would be annoying. HTML. Yeah. So I have, and it's not even in the main template, it's in a partial. So you can see we iterate over the schedules, which is good, but then it assumes the week dates are in here. So maybe I think I'm starting to convince myself that perhaps the right thing to do is that for every schedule, it could have a set of week dates. So it would be like schedule.weekdates. And since each schedule is built specific to the student, it feels okay. Still not my favorite, but it feels okay. All right, so what are we going to have to do to change that? It means that, well, where does this go now? So it mucks around with where this build week dates function is called, because right now this can be called much earlier. In fact, you can see it here. Here's the sort of generally calculated for the whole view, and then the schedules gets called later. But I think what we're going to be doing in a moment is like passing it down. And to make things even more confusing, there's an edge case in all of this. And the edge case is, it's when there's a year boundary. So it's possible that someone wants to start a school year back to back with another school year in the same week. And I probably should have just punted on this functionality, but I didn't. In that case, when both school years show up, it renders both school years on the same page. And yeah, that just adds to the problem. So we need to get the week dates in the right spot. We need to get, there's a next week dates as well that is in here too, that we need to get in the right spot. And we've got to get the schedules too. Complicated, but reality. Okay, let's do one of these at a time. And as kind of, so I don't forget, we'll do Well, where's the other one? Week dates. Week dates. Well, maybe I didn't have to build it in both. All right. I don't want to overthink this though. Well, let's try and move the goal. All right. Goal is to move week dates into each schedule, each student schedule. That's the objective. And if we do that, then if we can do that, we can say student like this. And that's going to fail because now this MyPy is noticing, hey, you don't have enough arguments on here, so you can't do that. So we can't just call it here. We need to go to well, while we're here, let's just go ahead and correct this too. We know that we're passing, we want the student in there so that we can pass it along like this. That's what we're wiring together. We have to call get break with the student keyword argument. So we need this to work, and we need to move this. I think where this needs to move is to the get schedules method. And right here, where I do a list comprehension, we have to unroll this list comprehension. So we're going to do schedules is an empty list. Start with that. And then we'll say, so to unroll this thing, we'll take the for loop, and now we're going to do, so like, I guess first let's unroll it completely. So we were going to say, ultimately we need to return the schedules. And then here we want to say schedules, oh my word, schedules append. And then we want to append whatever's returned by this get student week schedule thing. Okay. So this is like the unrolled version of the list comprehension more directly. And I think I also want to, let's go ahead and take the schedule here and delete what's inside here and put that there. Because we need to, we're doing all this so that we can actually manipulate the schedule a little bit. So now we've got a schedule. This schedule is a dictionary. It's the same dictionary that we saw here that has this, a course. It's a dictionary with courses and students. And what I'm going to do is we're going to add the week dates. So this thing right here, the build week dates, and add it to the schedule. So we can do that by going like this. We can add the week dates. And now we can say self build week dates, and we have the school year. We have the week, I think. Yep. And we have the student. I think that accomplishes the objective. Cool. I'm glad the stream has given you a taste of how Django looks. Like this is an unfortunate spot in some way because like I don't actually feel like this is truly representative of a lot of Django because we're working in the most complicated view in the whole application, which you're going to spend time in your most complicated view, but it just means that what I have to do here is very specific to my application and very specific to my logic. Which makes it maybe for a little bit harder to follow than if it was just sort of some stock Django views. So I apologize if any of this has been super confusing. I'm trying to do my best here. So let's see. I think that's good for now. I think that might be what we need. What is complaining? Something is in error here. So this is the one we have to fix when it's got the next year stuff. I don't think we have to worry about that yet. So let's put this up as another to-do to come back to. Fix this for each student. Okay. For the moment, I'm just going to comment it out. The error goes away. Okay, so now that we have this, we can return to the week schedules. And I think if we did the work right, all we need to do is say schedule.week schedules. Since we've nested this list now inside of the schedule itself, it's not some like global structure that the template is iterating over. It is this week dates is this specific thing. And as I say that, I realize some of the problem here, but I also see some of the solution for the next year schedule stuff. Okay, we'll see if this works. It may not work. Maybe there's some other problem that I have not foreseen yet, but with any luck, we got it right. It did that. I want to see it with the debug context on. So it looked like it worked. It refreshed. It's still showing the breaks properly, and we know that we modified that template. So I suspect that we did the right thing. However, I still want to see in the template context that that it is where I expect it to be. So now we've got courses as a key, we've got student as a key, and we've got the week dates as a key. So we've successfully pushed this into the per schedule stuff, which is great. And the global week dates is no longer there because it's not really relevant anymore. So we can return to the view. And actually, this is interesting. I think because of this, this actually gets easier for the rest of this code in a nice way. So I was concerned that we would have to do this to do, but now that I've moved the date calculation into each of the schedule building, it's calling the same get schedules function for a different week, a different future. And so there's nothing left to do there. So I think what we can do is get rid of this, clean up that code, which is nice. Go back up to, so there's nothing left to do on get schedules. That thing is done. And I think build week dates is probably only called once now, but we don't need it on this part either. The other note bit here, so see how I'm using, I've got a search for this, whatever's under my cursor, which is build week dates. And I'm cycling through this with Vim using the N key. If you know Vim, that just goes to your next search item, and it will loop around to the top of the file if it hits the bottom and can't find anymore. And you can see I'm hitting N and it's cycling back and forth, which tells me that these are the only two instances of this. Typically, when I write code, I like to put my methods with the most abstract thing first. Some people prefer to actually show all of their little parts, all of the components, and then put the most abstract thing at the bottom. It's kind of a bottoms up approach or bottoms at the top approach. And that the thinking behind that is you get to understand all the pieces before you see the final abstraction. Me personally, like I would much rather have the most abstract thing be at the top. And my reasoning behind that is that if I have the most abstract thing at the top, I can get to that point, and if I see the method name and I get it, and I don't need to dig into the method and just assume that the abstraction works, it just means that everything below the surface I can ignore. So because of that, I'm going to take this build week dates method that's here, and put it below the place where it's used, in case you're wondering why I was doing that. It sounds like you've done some C and C++. Like I've been a Vim user for quite a while, and VS Code is pretty slick. So, certainly use the editor that makes you happy. That's how I feel. And there's some great. I really like a lot of aspects of VS Code. I think I've tried it with did some Rust development for a while, just to learn a new language. And I found that it was a pretty great editor for that. But I still find myself coming back to Vim. Jesse Skinner, is this my first SaaS? No, it's not. The previous one, so I'm building this. So the history of this, won't go too deep into it, is that I built this for my family. We homeschool at my house, and this is something I built for my wife. I'm going to do this is easier than searching on my own website, I think. So I built a previous service. There we go. And you can see the result here, right from the name of the post. It was called College Conductor. So before my wife was a homeschooling teacher, she was a college counselor and consultant. So she helped people figure out what colleges they want to go to. And so I started to build this for her for reasons that are enumerated in this article, which you're welcome to go read. It didn't work. So there's a bunch of experience that I learned from that. This one is more successful. I actually have paying customers on this one, where the last one didn't. My wife is actually a user of this one, where she wasn't in the previous one. So I've definitely learned some stuff along the way in this process. But thanks for the question. It's a good one. And it just kind of goes to show, if you're trying something out and your first one, your first attempt isn't working, it's okay to say, well, that didn't work. Let me try something new in the future. Okay. There is another change we need to make here. So now that the week dates are pulled, oh, cool. What's your project, out of curiosity, if you don't mind sharing? So now that we've got the week dates pulled out, there's one bit of template cleanup that I want to do. So the templates that I was using for this app were, you can see I had to do that. I was doing this calculation in the context, but now that we've got that in the schedules, these partial templates no longer need this part. So we can clean that out, since this doesn't mean anything anymore. And you could see that from the partial itself no longer references just week dates. Now it's schedule.weekdates. So I think that gets us where we want to be for that to do. Let's take a look at the diff, see if I've got any more to-dos in there, if I clean them out properly. We deleted that. We moved the build week dates below, and we got rid of this to-do. We passed in the proper student, so it filters on that accordingly. We unrolled the list comprehension and added week dates in the for loop, so I think that's correct. And then we got rid of this unnecessary calculation of the next week dates, which was a nice side effect. This to-do is gone. Cleaned up some templates and cleaned up another template. Ah, very cool. There's a lot of, there's what's that style called? You probably know off the top of your head. It's popularized by Netlify. It has a name, and I'm totally blanking on it, where it's static apps powered by backend APIs and stuff. Jamstack, thank you. Yeah, the Jamstack. It's a cool approach. If it works and it works for lots of people, there's a lot of good stuff you can build out there with Gatsby and so on. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. Okay, so those are, it was on the tip of my tongue too. I know what you mean. I hate it when that happens. I know what I want to say. Not quite there. So that's that to do. What do we have left? We might have, it's probably the same kind of thing. So actually, before we do that, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's run the test suite. I have a feeling I have 100% coverage on this, so if I don't have failing tests, that it means I probably did my job poorly. Yeah. So I would expect some failures in here because I'm sure, those tests are probably looking for the context of week dates and next week dates. And now we have a new query too, or we actually are going down a query. Oh, that's cool. Saving some work. So yay, we started this by the stream by incrementing by a query, and now we're going the opposite direction. That's exciting. Performance for the win. So let's go back to test has schedules. This is like literally the function that we were had incremented the query count on earlier, and bumped it up to 19, and now it's down to 18 again. It's funny. And that is actually, it's probably something worth highlighting. There are probably better ways to do this. This is asserting on an exact number of queries. And it comes from, does this come from Django Test Plus or the built-in test case? Let's actually go check that out. So I use two things that might matter, and for test cases. That was a totally unclear statement. No. So the built-in Django test case, which is what Django Test Plus comes from, not test case. Has a method, I believe, assert num. Oh man, I thought it was on here. I'll get to your question in just a second, Mark EO5. Yeah, testing tools. Assert num. So you can assert on a specific number of queries like I'm doing. The downside of that, as you have seen now probably twice in this series of running tests, is that it's very exact, and maybe you don't care to be that exact. Looks like Django Test Plus has maybe perhaps a more forgiving way to do this. If really what you're trying to test with query assertion checks is, do I have any n+1 bugs that are running away from me, then this thing right here, assert query number of queries less than, is probably really the thing that I want. I'm going to leave it as the more specific thing now because I don't mind changing it every so often, but that is one thing that we need to watch out for. What do I think about TDD? Whoops. The test is now failing for other reasons. I go back and forth. Sometimes I do, I'm trying to think of when I do TDD, because I don't always do it. I'm kind of like you. Sometimes I go back and afterwards. I kind of have a handful of modes of testing or writing code that I've demonstrated on this stream. One mode is at this point I know Django pretty well. I've worked with it for many, many years, and I know that there are some patterns and some Django view code and templates and things that I need to write that have a very prescriptive set of steps. And if I do this thing, I can do that. And what I'll often do for those kind of very mundane sort of things, because I don't remember all the bits that happen sometimes, is I will write a basic test with no assertions and just try to call the code. And Django is pretty good about saying, let's say you have a view that you want to render and you're using one of the class-based views, and don't provide a template name. Well, if you try to run that code, Django's going to raise an exception and give you a template not found error. And so I sometimes call this error-driven development, where I make a super, super basic test and I literally just follow the errors that Django puts out in order to just jog my memory of, oh yeah, I need this query set, oh yeah, I need this template, and so on. And I found that that's a pretty decent pattern for rote stuff that is mindless. The other time that where I'm going to write a test afterwards is very much like when I really don't know what I'm doing necessarily. Okay, there's a balance. Sometimes when I don't know what I'm doing, I want tests as like a safety net of like, let me play around with something and give me a good quick feedback loop of, am I even in the right direction? So that's helpful. There are other times though where it is very open, blue sky. I really don't know what I'm doing, and I don't even know what I'm expecting as the output. In those cases, that's where I lean a bit more on, let me just wing it for a little while and see if I can sketch out some code that I think is going to be what I'm looking for. I don't go too far down that path though before I will write test, especially with this project. Like the reason that, this project itself, like I said, has 100% statement coverage. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm the only person that I can rely on. I don't have a partner in this. There's nobody else that's going to come save me. There's nobody, and I do have actual people paying for the product, and I don't want them to suffer because I screwed up. So I am using tests as my safety net to help protect me from myself. So I think TDD can be valuable, and there are times where I certainly apply it. I would say if I was to like guess on ratios, it's probably like, up to half the time is on the very easy stuff. This is like bread and butter Django, because there's a lot of stuff that really I'm building kind of CRUD interfaces, like this stuff that we might get to tonight if we have time with this UI stuff. It's CRUD stuff. There's create, read, update, delete, if you haven't heard that term before. And that is very much right in Django's wheelhouse, and just going through the motions is right for that. And then, maybe 30 or 40% of the time I'm doing a bit more of the exploratory backed by tests shortly thereafter. And then for that 10% of the time where it's like, I've never done anything like this before, that's when it's, let me not worry about it for a while and then come back after I've figured it out. I don't try and be too dogmatic about like my testing approach. What is important to me is that ultimately I have tests. I think that part is important, especially as I've said for this particular project. But however you want to do it, it's all cool with me as long as you're testing your code and not making your users suffer for your lack of trying on something. That's how I generally view it. Okay. We've got to fix the context on this has schedules thing. That's not right. But before we do that, let's go back to this test. And this one is now dead, I'm pretty sure, because we don't, all it's doing is testing the week dates. Maybe I'll wait to delete this because this might actually be useful for the has schedules thing, because I might want to move some of what's here into the has schedules. I have a feeling that's what the other test is complaining about. And then there was another test that had a query count failure that I think we need to go fix. But it might give us another kind of failure. It's the test weekly. Okay. Test weekly. And that went from 20 to 19. Okay. Is this one still broken? Yep, still broken. All right. I need to do somebody at my work did something pretty cool the other day. I don't know how you all look at this. I look at this and think, man, that's annoying. Because the default output for the assert is really unfriendly, right? So it's basically saying something is different, but good luck figuring out what's different. It does give us an outlet to say we can run this a little differently if we want to see more. Sometimes that hasn't worked. So I may come back to this in a moment if I'm not satisfied with the output. Let's try it again. I have the ability to run in my browser or my editor with this extra flag by calling out my test command explicitly rather than with my shortcut, and pass it the extra flag. So we're going to pass in -vv to give it very verbose mode, and see if we can identify what's going on. Okay, all right, this one's pretty straightforward. This is not so bad. There are times, though, where like what you get is just this kind of like garbage that you know, good luck figuring anything out with this. This situation works out where I can see, okay, this is failing because I didn't include the, I didn't include the week dates in, geez, what happened? In my context, so it's complaining about that. So now we know we can do that, and that's cool. But there are times where that doesn't work, and that's not cool. And I think what one of my coworkers pointed out is I think there's something in the standard library that's useful for this. So if we look at Python's standard library, I want to say it's difflib. And I can't remember which one he used, but there was a function in here. It might have been this. And I don't know, we're not going to get too deep into it, but what it essentially did was provided a better diff. Like there was some massive test in the application. In fact, I think I wrote the test. That was testing some really complex state that I'm not going to bore you with the details. And it was really hard to show because when something would fail, it wouldn't fail with great results. But by using one of these, it might have been unified diff. It was able to like really narrow in on where the problem was and make it much easier to determine where the failure was in the problem, because PyTest was failing. In this case, I don't think we're going to have to apply that because I think what we saw was a pretty doable thing to solve, but we can still keep that in your back pocket, I guess, if you ever run into like, man, this diff is annoying and I can't see what I'm doing. The standard library might have you covered. All right, let's look at this one more time, make sure I understand what goes in here. So we need to essentially, actually let me just copy it. Well, it's got some error formatting, but it's okay. So it's got some dates, it has no breaks. Okay. And we need to put it after the courses. It's going to format horribly, of course. But we can clean this up with Vim. So let's go here. Is it still not formatting right? Oh, come on. So there's probably some syntax error in here somewhere. I think that's it. There we go. Okay. That might make the test pass, possibly. Okay, but it's only going to pass today. It's only going to pass for the next couple of hours because this is hard-coded for this is this past week, or we'll have to specify the dates. So I think what we need is this date time calculation here. Yeah, it's got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think that's what it's going to be. So I'm going to do a little bit of reformatting. Not the most fun thing in the world. And I can't save, otherwise Black will like destroy all this. And there are probably faster ways to do this. But yeah. Yeah, sometimes I find Vim is like crazy powerful and good at some of this stuff, and then sometimes it's just atrocious. Oh, I know we need those 5 things. Vim is clutch on the key bindings for sure. We have, this is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. let's just put them all here. Again, there are, I'm sure, faster ways to do this, but I think this will be good enough. And hopefully I'm getting the right thing right. Okay. If it passed. Cool. All right, that's the schedule. That's the thing I wanted. Now I think we're down to one other test. Two other tests. Okay. Oh, right. We still have the has week dates thing that I said we might use, but we didn't. Okay. So let's go to the test has schedules. I think this was the other failing test, right? Nope, not that one. Test has schedules. Come on. Okay, let's make sure it's the same problem. And yep, same problem. Week dates. Now the difference is we're going to have a school break on this one, but it's the same pattern of problem. And it will have date type. Okay. So let's search for week dates and see if we can use that as the copy from there as the basis. Because I think it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. Still a Monday. The dates aren't going to match up, and the last one's not going to be right. Let's try it again. Let's see how far off we are. Yeah, it's like a whole week off. So we can delete that, and then this is going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oops. All right, we're close. Now we just need to add this date type stuff and the school break to this last entry. There is a school break already. That must be the school break. And there's the date type. So let's yank that from here and say school break. Let Black reformat that. All right. With any luck, this is now passing. Great. And we should be down to that one last test, but I said that test was actually one we're going to delete because it's context that we don't need anymore. I was just keeping it around until it's right there. So until we had actually seen if we needed to copy this, we didn't. I probably could have used that. So we're finally, I think, back up to a working suite. I don't like to go too long with having broken tests, especially between commits. I find it nice to get back to a clean state if I can, and I think that we are at that state. So as a reminder, we just cleaned up those tests. We got rid of a couple of those to-dos. There is still one more, which we'll get to in a minute, but I want to go ahead and commit. Clean up some to-dos. Crap comment, but it's okay. This is going to go up in the PR, and it'll all be seen as like an atomic thing that gets merged into the main branch. So I think that's fine. Now, last thing was this last to-do. What is this one? It might be the same kind of pattern because Oh man. Right. This is maybe the most challenging one. So like I said earlier in the stream, there is now this new state where it was sort of all or nothing before. You were either a school break or you weren't. And I believe, yep, this is the daily view. This is where it gets tricky. It's the tricky scenario. It's tricky for, why? Why is it tricky? Let's look at it how it looks now. So let's load up the app, and I'll show you why this gets more difficult. With the weekly view, you see all the days. So there's no like empty state for this. You're either you've either got something to show for those days or you don't. And if there's a break here, then you just show the break. The challenge is when you switch into the daily view. There's a daily view in the app that has like a detailed breakdown. It's meant for like quicker printing and stuff. And yeah, this is the daily view. Now, here comes the problem. You can see here's an example where both students have something to do with at least one of their courses for the day. September 2nd is going to be the break day. And here it is. This view works when breaks apply for the whole school year. And that's not true anymore, right? So now what do we do when a student doesn't have a schedule at all? For that student, you want to be able to show something like this. Just basically, I don't think we'll use the image because I know that these things get printed. I know for a fact that my wife prints these daily pages and looks at this stuff and finds them useful. And I know that others would do similar things. For whatever reason, homeschool families are quite attached to their paper from what I've observed, which is why they're like prominent print buttons on the UI. So that was new to me, but that's what I found out. So, but we do need to at least say, hey, student A, Mark, has nothing to do today, but Faye's got some stuff to do. And so we need to be able to split that out and show some appropriate messaging when there's no schedule. And if we bring up the context, we can see what that context is like. You like that artwork? Yeah, this is you too can use this artwork. This is a cool site. So there's a couple cool sites. So this is not artwork. These are good resources to know about. This one's called Unsplash. So if you write blog posts and stuff and you want to use some art that is people just better photographers than myself have taken shots, there's like a search engine built around this, and you can use these things for free. And you don't even technically have to credit anybody. It's probably nice to do so, but Unsplash is a pretty cool place. I bring up Unsplash because the other one is called Undraw, undraw.co. And I've mentioned this site on many occasions. I brought it up on many streams because I tend to use this artwork for empty states. I have some skills as an artist, but frankly, I don't want to spend my artistic skills working on app pages. That's just not how I want to spend my time. So the cool part about Undraw is that this person, Katerina Limpitsuni, has made like a bunch of this kind of art available. And again, free to use. And it's powered by a search engine too. So you can like search for, this is a homeschool thing. So I have at many times searched for like kids or school or something. I've used this piece of art. Now, here's the what I think is like super slick about this app. You can pick this. And so here's this piece of art right here. Actually, I have Flux on, so I have no idea what these colors actually are right now. So I'm going to disable that for a second. Everything's super yellow to me. Okay, so looking at this without Flux, this is like a, what is that, a purple? But what's cool about this site is that these are all SVGs. So if you want to change the color and you've got a theme for your website, you can come to this color picker and just slide it around, and maybe your website is bright orange. I don't know. And you plug in your hex code for whatever your color palette is, or you plug in your color directly by clicking around, and then you get customized SVG. So she did some really slick work here that swaps it out with the actual colors. I think that this is so cool that someone would take that level of effort, and it really will immediately like make your images that you integrate feel on brand for your product. So maybe you pair it with your primary color, maybe you have a secondary color, yeah, that's pretty cool. I probably even can, well, you all don't care. I have a bunch of these images where I basically just picked the primary blue that I use in School Desk for a bunch of these. Like you can see, this blue is literally the same as this blue. Crimsy, hi, welcome. We're finishing up some features for school breaks, for holidays and stuff that make them specific to students. But I was taking a break to talk about Undraw because it's a cool service, and I thought it was worth highlighting. So yeah, I picked this blue, and if you literally do a color match, the blue in this girl's shirt and the skirt and this boy's shirt over here matches the blue of my app, which is pretty neat. So definitely recommend Undraw. All right, I am going to turn off Flux though, because it is very intense. I've gotten the comment that my setup is too bright, especially with me using a white terminal, and I tried to use a dark terminal theme for like 6 months. I really gave it a good college try, and just couldn't do it. There were things about it that I couldn't get over. So hopefully y'all can bear it. Hopefully you have some kind of color filtering on your own display so you're not staring at the bright white either. If you are, apologies, or I hope it's your daytime for whatever time zone you're in. Okay, I think we're in this last to do for this 434 issue. And yeah, Flux is pretty awesome. We have to think about this for when a student has no stuff. Yep. Oh, you're welcome. Happy to help with the Undraw thing. I don't even remember where I was introduced to it, but as soon as I think I know where it was. So I don't know how much of you are into podcasts, but maybe the podcast topics might not interest you, but I'll reference it anyway. Drawing a blank on it. Oh, junk. What is all right, I'm going to bring up my phone here and look it up, because it's a good podcast that I like listening to, and I think it's where I heard of Undraw, which is why it's relevant. Podcast app. Yes. The podcast is called The Art of Product, or Art of Product Podcast, or something like that. There it is. And this is a podcast with, you can see their names here, Derek Reimer and Ben Orenstein. And they talk about building their own products. So it's a couple of dudes talking. You've probably heard of podcasts like that. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. So they kind of are going along their journey. And over the years, I've been listening to them for a long time. They'll talk about various resources, and I think this is where I heard of Undraw. If it's not, well, there you go. There's a good podcast reference anyway. They talk specifically about building software as a service products. That's an interesting comment. Getting practice for non-native speaker of English. So I am learning Chinese and Russian on the side. Maybe I should get some Chinese and Russian podcasts and just immerse myself in that. I don't know how well it would work, but it'd be worth a shot. Okay, back to the app. And the other thing I said we're going to do is we're going to put on debug mode and reload this page and see what that context looks like. So there's nothing on the schedule for today. Hello to you too. I don't know all those other words, but privyet is hello, isn't it? Oh, and is that Russia? I don't. You can see like the Russian part is very new for me. I'm farther along in the Chinese, but I'm only about like 4 or 5 lessons into the Russian. I started that probably a month ago. Yes, I don't study enough Russian yet. I know only a handful of words at this point. Yeah, let's look at context. I think at the stage with my Russian, I'm just now like learning enough of the alphabet to know that the Cyrillic, that first character sounds like a P, that second character sounds like an R. Like that's really the stage I'm at. Got a long way to go. All right, we've got schedules here. The schedules list is empty, which is why we're getting the empty display. And I think I even programmed that into the template. If we look at the templates area and look at the daily template, there's a bunch of checking. So I've got a bunch of checking for when you start the application and don't have enough data in there. So there are some empty states that show up, like if you haven't even created any students yet. This last state is when you actually have some students and it starts to display the user interface, all of these, like the week and all of that stuff. Yeah, I like the challenge of both Chinese and Russian exactly for that reason, that they're very different from English. I did Spanish as went to private school and did Spanish as in elementary school, and then did Spanish in high school. I didn't do any more in college, but I learned enough there. But the Romance languages, nothing against the Romance languages, just to be clear, felt so close to English in some ways that I could look at them and say, okay, I can kind of get a sense of what that word is because I know the common Latin root, right? But with Chinese characters and the Cyrillic alphabet, you mostly can't do that. That's not entirely true. Like once you learn some of the Cyrillic alphabet and you hear the actual word pronounced, you're like, oh, that's basically the same thing. Like office and office are the same, they're the same word. But I like that challenge. If I've thought about it and I thought like if I were to learn yet another language, I'd probably round it out with Arabic. I think is maybe the next one. But I really want to spend a year or two on Chinese and Russian. I started Chinese like end of last year, and Russian about a month ago. Definitely all about the challenge. Anyway, that's my side hobby of spending time on Duolingo. So we've got this case where we have enough context and we're trying to show whether to display a schedule or not. And so there's this for loop of schedules, right? And so here's this for loop of schedules. There's an empty block, and this is a feature of the Django template language. So if you don't have anything in the schedules, if the schedules list that we saw somewhere in the view is empty, there's nothing in it, then it goes into this empty block. And that's what we're seeing right here, is nothing for anybody. But what we need to do is, what happens when one of these schedules needs to be empty. Have you thought about doing some sort of IT-related talk show? Well, have I got something for you? Yes, I have. I actually have a podcast, which, dang, there's some weird formatting on that I need to fix. It doesn't look that way when it's fully expanded. But I have the Django Riffs podcast, and that is it's a podcast. As you can see here, it's a podcast for learning Django, and I essentially teach Django from like no knowledge to building up to, I don't know if I get to all the way to what I know, because I know a lot of this stuff, but Hero Plats, Django sucks. Yeah, Laravel for the win. There's lots of good frameworks out there, or not frameworks. Like if Flask is more your thing, or Rust is more your thing, or Ruby on Rails, whatever makes you happy. So I talk about Django there, and it walks you through it. It's actually sort of a companion to this article series that I've got on understanding Django, and so I'm actually a little bit behind in producing a new Django Riffs episode, but essentially I walk through all of these topics and build out people's knowledge. I was looking at it. The reason I started this whole article series is the Django documentation, while excellent, it approaches it from a pedagogical stance, which I'm not quite sure I agree with. It starts with the data layer and the models, and then kind of works into the actual displaying of stuff. And maybe that works for some people, but from my point of view and my perspective, it seemed like it would be, if you've never done like web framework development before and you're trying to get into something, I thought more of a pedagogy of, let's show you the browser and show you how to like build URLs and then build views, like little basic things, and then build up to more and more complex as you get to your views. So that's the approach I took here, and you can actually see that structure played out here. And the Django Riffs podcast essentially has companion episodes for all of these topics. I'm currently working on another article right now on file management, so like profile pictures and stuff. Oh, very cool. Hero Plats. That's awesome. Congrats on getting your V1 done. That's good stuff. Okay, so there we go. There's my IT talk show. It's not an interview show. It's just kind of me. Yeah, sure. Sorry. Django Riffs. And you can find this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of those places, as they say. I do this. I'm kind of I defer to, and if you're looking for more Django stuff, there is Django Chat. This is more of your traditional interview style. I don't know why that's not loading. Django Chat. Hello. There we go. Django Chat is more of your interview style podcast, and you can see it's hosted by these two gentlemen, William Vincent and Carlton Gibson. Carlton Gibson is actually the one of the Django fellows, who is kind of shepherds the framework along, and it's actually paid by the Django Software Foundation. And Will is on the Django Software Foundation board. So these are two guys who are in the know, and they talk to like a lot of people in the community. So that's a good podcast if you like want to start to get to know some of the people and personalities and technologies that are in there. I think it's a really good avenue there. So mine's purely on like learning the framework. I think grand vision for what that podcast would look like is like after I get through this series of articles, I have an endpoint. Man, we're really going into how the sausage is made today, but that's okay. So I've got this like series of, here are the remaining articles that I'm planning to write, but it's taken me like a year and a half to write the 16 that I have, so this is probably another year's worth of work, and I'm going to have accompanying podcast for each of these, and then probably after that, if I'm not completely burnt out and still finding value in producing those podcasts, then I'll move on to like popular packages. Maybe I'll interview the actual like authors of the packages and get some insight directly from them. I haven't really thought too far down that road, but that's what's going on. So I do. This is why, like, I comment that I'm at the beginning of the stream. I always comment that I'm thankful for Patreon supporters and stuff. This is what I do. That is above and beyond that requires hosting and all this other stuff. Yeah, burnout is. Be careful, and know when to take breaks. Okay, speaking of breaks, let's see if we can finish off some of this and round off this thing. I do this on top of full-time day job. Yeah, that's why I have to be careful. Like this project right here, this school desk project, is essentially at this point relegated to this stream. This is the time that I make progress on this to help myself not burn out. The writing and the podcasting I try and do like a Pomodoro a day to make some progress on that. Not always good about that, but that's how I do it. Yeah, it's tough to balance this out because like I have kids and they have soccer and dance and tennis and chorus and things. So life is full, but it's good. I enjoy doing a lot of this, so it's not like it's not a burden. I'll put it that way. Okay, we've got the schedules. Let's figure out what do we want to do about this empty state stuff. So I think, how have I built this? We have course schedule. That is poorly named. Would I recommend stream? It depends on how you approach the streaming stuff. If you view streaming as like, hey, this is just something fun to do. Like I said, this is my time to work on this project because yeah, it's fun. It's fun chatting with you all. But I also make this small incremental progress on a project that I may not otherwise have a commitment to make progress on. So I find that valuable for that. It's okay. It's okay that I don't. I've already made a lot of progress here that I've been pleased with, so I'm happy to chat. And if you view it that way, if you view it as this is like a way to connect with people, and certainly don't view it for like I'm gonna make a lot of money here or I'm gonna have a massive following. Maybe you will. The probability is pretty low, especially because programming streams are pretty niche in the scheme of Twitch out there. Like I don't have hundreds of thousands of people here and chatting and doing emotes and all the stuff. I'm not swimming in that kind of thing. So as long as you take that kind of perspective, yeah, streaming could be a fun way to do it. As Jesse Skinner just pointed out, there's an acceptance that I've taken at this point of knowing that the process of like explaining stuff and having the conversation definitely slows down the rate at which I could crank out some of this code. So if I was purely like, I gotta get this done, and I had time slotted away to do it, then and if that's you, then maybe streaming is not the right fit. If you're willing to, if you don't have any like pressing deadlines and you're looking for some way to engage, then streaming can totally be fun. And sometimes it's really quiet. Sometimes I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm talking to myself. That occasionally happens, but other times I have plenty of good chats like this one. All right, let's take a look at this daily view. Are we in the daily view? Yep. And we have to fill up the way this view works is it starts by populating a bunch of like this general stuff that I talked about, like when you don't have enough data yet and there's some empty states or different things, like you don't have any tasks or you don't have any school years, you don't have any students. All of those things get populated in this top part. And assuming you've gotten through all of those hurdles, in other words, you're into the app and you're doing stuff, then it moves on to this daily context. And Like you can see, here's the condition where this executes. Yeah, there's some, I'm sure there's like a lot of people, and knowing the popularity of JavaScript, you might find a lot of people that'd be interested in that kind of stuff. Yeah, give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, well, you can say you tried. So we get down to this daily context thing, and it's called in this one spot, and it's after you've cleared all the necessary prerequisites for the daily for calculating and displaying something meaningful here for an actual school year. Within that, there are some days that I populate, and that's what shows up here on the top. There are some links that I populate. There's little bits that populate headers and stuff. But again, we want to get down to the schedule part on the bottom. And so if we continue scrolling, we get there eventually. Okay, here it is. So it's this get schedules. And we have this get schedules method. Ooh. Okay, good. I named it appropriately here. And so there's like an escape hatch here. So if it's a break for everyone, that's what you see right now. And I don't want to get rid of that state. And so that's all good. So it's when we get a little farther with this for loop that this is where we need to do something a little different. And thankfully, okay, cool. We might have some good hooks already. So just revisiting this, like it's been a while since I've looked at this code. You can see the same pattern that we saw with the weekly view, right? Before it was the list comprehension that we unraveled or unrolled. And that, in this case, it's already that. In fact, I don't know why I didn't do a list comprehension here. Maybe I had some old code that I deleted. I don't know. But it's already set up kind of the way that we would, I think, want. So getting down another layer, if we have the right signal in the schedule, and this template loops over those schedules, then it should be a matter of, like right here, so where we have for schedule, we could do something that does like an if check. And what could be, because remember, these are schedules per student. So we could say, I'm just sketching up something that is probably close to what we would do. So if schedule is break day, then we can display the like Mark doesn't have anything to do message, and that way that kind of gets that. And then the else block is like, okay, there is a schedule and we need to display it, and so that's when we would display all this other stuff. So I think that feels like the API that I want. I want to add to this schedule dictionary an is break day that is calculated for this particular student for this particular day. Man, what a mouthful. So let's leave that little fragment of HTML template there to guide the API. And here's the schedule. And what we want to do, we need to find where the breaks are. Oh, okay. Because, all right. Now I'm seeing it. So because this is one day, right? And school breaks have applied to the entire break day previously, and we already had that escape hatch here. That means that this get student schedule function pays zero attention to whether or not this is considered a break day. So this is new, like just totally new stuff that we're adding to this particular function. In fact, so much so that we could say, if we could say, calculate the break stuff here and then stuff it in the schedule, And then we could do a bailout early and return and not do any lookup on the courses because there wouldn't be any need to do that. So what we need is the day. Hey, here's the question. Is this day, is that a date? Or is that, what is that? Get day coursework. What do you, man, I need some type annotations. Okay. I don't remember if that's a date object or something else. So I probably should start type annotating, sprinkling some type annotations. Looks like it might be a date if this is to be trusted. So we've got, I type annotated this last time for is break day for everybody. Here's the day, pass to that method. Here's get schedules. And so that day is a date time date. So let's just put that. In fact, we could probably annotate. The nice part about Python's gradual type annotation is we don't have to annotate the whole thing if I don't want to. I could just say, well, this is a date time date because it's going to be helpful to know that. And, well, although MyPy might complain and say we need to do that. Okay. Yeah. Teaching is, it's pretty satisfying, right? Like, it's nice to be able to teach. Oh, you're all good, Marky. It's all good. Nice to be able to teach people about stuff that they have no experience with, especially like, so something else that I do is I am the organizer for the local Python meetup in my city. Just another thing on the pile. But what I love about that is like meeting people that come to that kind of stuff and they're like totally new and looking for pointers and guidance. And I run some, like part of what that meetup will do is it will occasionally run like workshops and stuff too. So you really get people who are like bringing their laptop and trying to learn. And Python being as popular of a language as it is means a lot of people want to learn Python. And I've been doing Python since 2007, so many years. It's kind of fun to see people's face light up when they understand something. So I totally get your desire to want to teach people, and it's a bummer that teachers don't get paid better, right? Okay, so I've added some date annotations, so that now I've got some hints that those are dates. We can propagate that knowledge down to date time, date time, date. Hopefully I'm not going to regret that. I don't know if MyPy is going to let that fly with it partially annotated, but I'll fix that later after stream. If I have to annotate it, the whole thing, I'll annotate the whole thing. But at least to help with like, what is this thing when I get down to this method? And the reason I wanted to do that is because we have to take the API for doing this is on the school year model. Let's do a split there. The API is called getBreak. And I guess we can use even the simplified one. We can say isBreak to do that Boolean check. So it takes a date and it takes a keyword, a student keyword argument. So we can say, we can calculate that here. IsBreak and school year isBreak. And it takes, it's going to take the day, and it's going to take student equals student. And now we can pass this to, we'll put this at the end. We don't need to put it at the beginning. So we'll have isBreak is equal to isBreak. And if we know it's a break, we can bail early with the schedule itself. So I think the return of this is a schedule. Yeah. So if we're here, and if the break is true, we don't need any of the course information. That'll be a useless lookup. Although this is a new path that we might have to write a test for. So it might be easier to let it go through. Yeah. But I think this is the right thing to do for performance. So now we've got that. Frankly, I think that solves this problem. The challenge, here's the challenge, is like, this is not easy because we've not done any of the editing UI yet. This is actually not easy to set up to actually make this happen. Perhaps we can do this in the admin or the shell. Maybe that's worth doing. Let's try it, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is probably worth trying out. So what I want to do is fire up the Django management shell. And actually, let's do shell plus so we get all the models loaded so I don't have to do all those imports. So now we have all of the models loaded. And, well, that's curious. Historical account. Okay, whatever. So we have a school break. And what is the school? Oh, man. What is the user? Good grief. The user is me. And I think the username is Matt. I think that's what I created. Yep, no, that's the login credential. So this is the right user. So we want the school, that's the school, and we want the current school year. So do I have a method to look that up easily? I don't remember. Get current year for, there we go. I guess that answers that question. So we want the school year, and so we can say, I'm just going to use the really short, crappy names. So apologies if that gets confusing, but we'll do school year, get current year for you is Matt. So now we have the school year that we're currently looking at. This is what we've been dealing, the data that we've been dealing with. And we can do, we want the right school break. So let's get, I don't actually know which break this is going to be. There are absolutely better ways to search for this, I'm positive, but I'm going to go with, this is like the lazy approach. And we can't just say break because that's a keyword argument. For school year breaks all. Yeah, especially when you're like in a shell, when you're just like hacking something together. Because what I'm trying to do here is just find the actual break. And then what I want to do is once I've identified the break, we're going to use the many-to-many model to actually apply this to just one of the two students. That way, because what you didn't see from this stream is the school break can be filtered for just one student, like this whole goal is. And if there's exists a record in the many-to-many field that's mapping between the school break and the student, that it means that that school break is only for that student. And that will help us with this testing. We should be able to go back to the weekly view and see the break only appear for one of the students. And this same in this daily view, we want to be able to see that the student has a break or doesn't. And the only reason we're getting to this level of the shell is because there's no UI to drive this manually. Maybe I could do this from the Django admin, but I don't even think I've set that up either. So we've got breaks, and I want to print out the break ID and the break start date. There's only a couple. All right, here's the ID. So let's get the school break of school break objects get ID equal this. Now, okay, we have got the school break. Now we need to add to the school break, which are with our many to many field. So I think I put that on the school break itself. Yep, there's a students. So we need to add one of the two students, either Mark or Faye. So I can also get the students for, I need to get a particular student. And so let's just say student.objects.filter where user is equal to you, because I attached, nope, that's not right, where students are associated with a school. So I can say where school is equal to the user's school. So in other words, Matt's school. And just give me one of those. And let's put it in to this. And what is the first name? Is this, okay, this is Mark. So then we'll say school break dot students dot add student. And that will save this new entry in the through table that would make it apply to just one particular student with any luck. So let's open up a new tab, turn the virtual environment on, activate the app again, and let's see if we got it right. Yeah, cool. Oh, that's exciting. So here it is manifest. This is the Mark now has a break on the second, where Faye does not. So now what we have though is we can go to the daily view on the second, and now we have, this is where we're in this weird like in between state, and we don't want this. This is where we need to add in the extra stuff. But if we come back over here, so we're done with the terminal, or the shell. So we can close that, and let's turn this back on to debug for a second, and just confirm that the daily view has that is break state that we care about. Edit this, or refresh this, load this up, look at the context, check out the schedules. Good. Is break is true, is break is false, and it has course stuff because it's false. Very good. So what we are left with is the actual like template work. So we know that this is correct. We know that there's not looping it over any courses, so there's that performance saving. So it's definitely hitting this line. It's probably not doing that in tests yet. We're gonna have to fix that. We don't need that anymore. And now we're at the stage where we need to take all of this stuff and indent it a couple of times. And well, first thing to do is highlight the whole thing. So go around the whole tag, and then indent, and then indent again, because it needs to be when it's not a break day. So we want to take the end if, and we want to go to that empty and put that here. Hopefully that made sense. So now we've captured the state where it's not a break day. So with that with that change made, the effect is that if I refresh this page, I expect Mark and this whole section to just poof, go away. So let's see what happens. See if I got that right. Oh, I am wrong. So there's more somewhere, I think. How's that working? Print link, the whole form. What in the world? Why did that work? Schedule is break day. We just established that that was true. What's going on? Maybe it didn't reload the template. That would be weird. Nope, I clearly have something else wrong, which I shouldn't have been surprised. There's definitely template reloading when you're in debug mode. So That should not have been it. But it appears that it's getting into this else block when, did I call it is break day or did I call it is break? Ah, there's the problem. I called it is break. Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's an interesting comment there about PHP. I think there's some similarity. So I did PHP. Actually, PHP was, I think, the first like real language that I learned or cared about. Yes, it's definitely back-end rendering with like server-side templates and stuff. So it's very much in a classic like Ruby on Rails, or I think Laravel operates the same way. But when I think about PHP, and this is dating me, perhaps, because I think modern PHP has come a long way. Like I was writing PHP before they had an object model, I think, like old PHP. And the version of PHP that I think of is like you would have your basically your HTML page. You'd include the PHP tag at the top to indicate that PHP should parse it and render it. And then I think I initially used PHP only for its include feature. So I was at college. I went to college. When did I go to college? I went to college from 2002 to 2006. So at least for undergrad. Back when I was in college, I was in the engineering school. And well, this wasn't particularly engineering school. They gave every student who went to my school, I went to the University of Virginia, was given like a certain amount of like disk space, like virtual disk space on the school's network. And okay, cool. 2012. And in that, with that disk space, you could with your computer map it as a drive and basically treat it like a local file storage. So I don't know their actual setup. I don't know if they have NFS. I don't know how they did it. But what I do know is that it also mapped to your they give you like you could go to the virginia.edu website, and then they had the practice of doing like tilde with a username, which is really common with a lot of these schools. You might see some stuff like this at certain schools still today. That essentially gave you your own web space to do stuff with. And this is where I started learning HTML for the first time. So I didn't do like any programming until college. And I made some really crappy, what did I use at first? I found some very crappy HTML editor software that I'm drawing a blank on. It was a Microsoft product. It was horrible. It made the worst HTML. Like if you actually looked at the source, it wasn't Dreamweaver. That was like the good one at the time. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But what I discovered is like I was copying stuff everywhere. In order to get one page, I would literally like copy all the content and have a duplication problem. So if I wanted to make anything repeat, I like had to go update everywhere. And that was really dumb. And I discovered that PHP was on the servers. It was what was actually serving the static files, or the seemingly static files, when I discovered that you could make your own web page. So that's when I started to use PHP for the include directive. Was the very first time that I used PHP to care about anything. And I never became great with PHP, and I mostly dabbled with it, and was a pretty horrible web developer for many, many years. But it was good. That brings back fond memories. Yeah, exactly. include header.php or include sidebar or whatever it was. I mean, like this, we're talking about, this was a frames-based website too. It was, or I think I did frames at first. Frames was the first step to do reuse. This was the common pattern of like, you could do a frames-based website, and you could have your sidebar be a frame, and then your content be another frame. I don't know how many of you used HTML frames. It was terrible. But the step beyond frames was to switch to includes. so that I could get some actual reuse. Good times, long time ago. All right, so now we have, PHP is still super relevant. In fact, I am, the Django survey, there's a Django survey, it might still be open, it might have actually closed yesterday, I don't know. But it was asking like, what can Django do better? And if you go to Django project, it's good documentation. Like I said before, it's really good documentation. There's a lot of stuff here. But let's do a compare and contrast, shall we? Of here's what I think Django could do better. If we go to Laravel, and this is something I hear frequently, like talking to folks like yourselves about, like, well, how do I get into Django? How do I solve this such and such a problem? There's a Discord link below if you want to chat. Like when I'm not streaming, you're welcome to do that. It's where I answer some of these questions. But Laravel is a conceptually similar framework to Django in quite a few ways. Server-side rendered, model MVC kind of stuff, a lot of that. And the big difference that I notice is that Django hooks you up with the documentation, gives you downloads and tells you like what it is quickly and some news. That's all good. And then it gets to like this community section where you kind of get reference to mailing lists and that kind of stuff, which I think is telling of maybe Django's age a little bit, the use of mailing lists. And you can read through these things and see little things in the sidebar that help out too. Now, let's contrast with Laravel. Similar kind of framework, PHP. And I think this is where Laravel is crushing it. If you get down to a little bit lower, Laravel starts talking about the Laravel ecosystem. And this is, I think, what Django is missing, is Laravel has all of these things. Now, granted, I know enough about Laravel to know that there's kind of one guy, I'm drawing a blank on his name, who is a big leader in like driving the Laravel community. And he is a person who is behind a lot of these and a lot of the marketing of stuff. But essentially, what I'm impressed by with the Laravel community is that the answer to some of the common questions, like if it's not in the core framework and you need to reach for something, where do you go and what do you reach for? And I feel like Laravel is doing a good job of saying, like, here is some opinionated answers on tools that you can reach for in order to solve your problems. And I think Django has a lot of these answers, but we do a pretty not great job of advertising it. So like if you want to go and find out what tools, what packages could I use to extend my Django app, you could find my site and you could go to my requirements file and like look at these packages and see all this stuff prefixed with Django and start figuring that out. You could do that. You could also go to Django project, Django packages.org and search through the categories here. You could do that too. Either of those would work. But I think what that does is it leaves a lot of slogging for you to actually do, and a lot of self-discovery. So I wish, if I could snap my fingers, I wish that the Django website would be a bit more opinionated about what it suggests for people to use. Because there are answers that like I could immediately tell you right away, like what is the most popular XYZ thing. So if you want to do email, I'd say without hesitation, I would send you to this package, Django Anymail. Like I wouldn't even think twice about it. This is the way that I think is recommended to interact with email service providers. And are you going to find that on the Django website? I don't think so. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'll get off the soapbox now. But I think that's something that that we could learn from PHP community, because they know how to reach a lot of people. They know what people care about, and we could just do better. Okay. The Django, your band was called Django. That's hilarious. Oh, you're welcome. It's fun to like think about, because I think Django is such a great framework, and it is. Well, I wish it was used by more people, and I think that sometimes we don't set ourselves up to be used by more people. All right, let's do a refresh on this. Hey, finally. Okay. We've got this now filtered out. And all right, I think I want to keep this template super simple for now and let my users tell me more. So let's look at the empty state. Let's combine a couple bits here, and then I think we want to wrap this up with maybe checking that the tests still work and then calling it a night. So we want to have, I don't want to print this on a whole page. So we've got some print CSS stuff in here that I'm not going to worry about. I will use the same header, and I will, for the sake of it, wrap this in a div, because I think that might add some value later. Maybe not, but it's not going to hurt. It adds some symmetry with, this is a div for when you have stuff, and this is a div for when you don't. So now we should have, if I refresh, we're going to have mark. Okay, great. The other thing that we can do is we can jump down to the empty area, and this is a break day for mark. So why don't we take just this chunk, and we'll clean this up, but we'll come back onto the top here and come to this section, plop it in there, and let's just see how it looks. It's going to look not good, but sometimes this is the way I approach some of these things, is put in something. And I'm using Tailwind Css. Big fan of Tailwind CSS. If you're not using it, highly recommend it. It's pretty cool because you basically spend 0 time in a CSS file, and you spend all your time working on a single HTML file, and it makes your life much easier. So we've got the first name. We don't need a second header. I'm trying to decide what we want to say. I think we just want to say this. Instead of your students, we'll just say Mark has no scheduled task today. I think that's the simple message that I want. Let's delete this header too. Let's delete the break day part, and let's use simplify it to schedule student first name. Have a good night, Jesse. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for chatting. I enjoyed your conversation. All right. Cool. This feels good enough, right? Like, could this be more? Sure. But I think that this probably conveys enough that people care about. Maybe thinking about like styling of this, like maybe I want to make this a little thinner, because by itself, when it's in the empty state, it's got that image, and I'm adding the boldness to it for the purpose of like making it stick out, because like your eyes are naturally wanting to gravitate towards the image, which is why this has a bit of a thicker weight, because it needs to capture like, hey, there is text here, dummy. Pay attention. Like some of this stuff matters. I don't know that it looks a little weird to me. So what I'm seeing here is like the part that's calling out my attention is that we've got this, and then we've got this thin font here, which is what is that? Might literally be thin, extra light. Maybe that's too much. Whoops. Weight. What font weights do we have? It was already on light, and this is extra light. So let's try extra light, see how it looks. And maybe we don't want to do that, but I just want to see it once. And if it looks too thin, then we can back that out. Yeah, that feels a little better to me, because now when I look at this, like I'm sure this is probably also extra light. It just adds some visual, I don't know if symmetry is the right word in this, but consistency. That's what I wanted to say. So maybe a little bit slightly harder to read, but it just fits better. And it's not a super important message anyway, so I think I'm okay with this. So very simple state message when the student doesn't have any tasks for that day. There might be an argument in the future for, somebody might eventually say, hey, I want to add tasks for a student for that day, but I'm not going to worry about that kind of call to action. I'd rather have this be remain this kind of simple interface of this day view is mostly about like you're taking care of the day and what is already on the schedule. If you want to go elsewhere and modify the day, either go to the week, go to the school year, and go back and edit stuff. Okay. With that, let's see how we're doing. Did we get rid of all the to-dos? I think we did. Yay, none of those. Let's run PyTest. Let's run it without coverage first to make sure all the tests are passing. That'll run a lot faster. So you can see already, well, there's some failures. Running PyTest without coverage makes it run a ton faster. Like I'm running with a single processor, and it's going to end a long time, 15 seconds versus what would we say? What it was like 50 something for running it with coverage. So that's slow. So we got two things that we want to fix, and then I think once we fix these, then we'll also have to deal with. I bet we'll have missing coverage, is my guess, and then we'll call it a night. So let's fix this first test. What is failing? Let's run it with the verbose mode. Just make sure we're seeing all the output. So it's looking for an expected schedule for the daily stuff, and we need to incorporate is break is false. Okay, that one's easy. Come down to the context, and is break is false because we haven't added any breaks. All right, one down, one to go. And I meant to run the whole file. I don't remember what the other test was. Okay, the other test is good old test has schedules. There's a lot of stuff in that test. It's the second one, I think, because this is the daily one. Yep. His break is false. Yep. So I suspect what we're going to be missing is when the case when is break is true. And that's where the coverage is going to be missing too. So we'll test this. Those were the only two test failures. So I'm going to run this coverage again. And I don't know, I'm not a gambler, but if I were one to take bets, I'm going to guess that this line right here, 296, is missing coverage. Although there is code. There's probably code. No, this is like totally new path. Pretty sure this will be true. So what are we not getting to tonight? This is like 2.5 hours, so we're not going to get to the actual like user interface stuff to actually expose this feature and make it available. The next stream, which I don't know if I'll actually get to next week. I think I have to run. It's actually unlikely because I'm going to be running the local meetup. But in a couple of weeks, when we can get back to this, yeah, there it is, 296. We're going to work on that create page and that edit page for school breaks and make sure that it displays students. And The default will be to display, if you're creating a new one, it will display all students and have them checked. And we will have to update the actual like saving logic, and I can't remember if it's using a form or it's directly in the view. And if some set of the students is not checked, I'm not going to finish this edit stuff tonight, but yeah, I am going to finish this little bit here. So if some portion is not checked, then that means that the break will be specific to only that student, and will create those records into the many-to-many relation field. So let's finish off this line. We need a test for this. This will probably be like, this might take another 5 minutes or so to do to wrap up. So we need this is deep in the student schedule. That's the unfortunate part about this, which means we might need to build up another schedule test. So this is the daily test case. This is some of the oldest code. I've learned some lessons about writing tests on my own projects for this stuff. One of those lessons is write doc strings. Like you can see this, I can tell that this is an old test because it doesn't have a documentation string. So what we want is, where we want to put this. Okay, I'm gonna use the has schedules test as like a starting point, because there's a bunch of data that needs to be set up, and then we'll trim it down. So we'll take this thing, and this test has some learning in it that's already valuable, and some of that value is that it's got relative date calculation, because I've been burned by trying to make a test that that just works on a certain day, and then I've written some code on a weekend and stuff fails because the scheduling gets a little wonky on the weekend. So we don't want that. So let's see, this is test is break. In order to set this up right, we need, this is like down into, it can't be a break day for everybody. So is break for student. And so we can, this time we want to add I want to add a doc string that says a student's break day appears in the schedule. It's probably representative of what we really want here. And what do we not need? So we probably don't need any of this stuff related to courses and tasks. None of that's actually relevant, because literally this is, we're getting to this highest level of a student is in a school year, so they have to at least be enrolled, so we have to have a grade level. But the content of this schedule is going to be pretty much empty. So we can take out all this. And that's going to cause this to blow up, but that's okay. We want this to be like so. It's going to be an empty list of courses. And then we are going to expect this to be true. And I'm going to switch this assertion style. So I switched this a while ago to be something different, to use more of the PyTest features. So we can say assert self get context, and we say you want to use the same context key of schedules. So that's all good. And then we can pass in expected schedule. Expected schedule. This is more of a PyTest style. I just think it reads a little clearer if I do it right. I didn't do it right. So we actually do a comparison. That's why it's more valuable, I think, to see it compared that way. And then we don't really even need the local variable. I don't think that's really adding a lot to this. So what I'm going to do is delete this, delete the local variable, and then close it off with a list. So now we get a comparable thing there. And we get a failure It's hard to see that, so let's put it in the verbose. Where, okay, this is accurate except for the is break status. Now, even if we added a school break here for this day, what day is it? It's getting the daily view. It's freezing the time. So we probably would need to say for this particular date. Yeah, Friday. Okay. So we want to do the school break factory. And we need to give it a start date of Friday and an end date of Friday. And we need to also give it the school year so that it actually applies to the student. Now, this is still not going to work, I think, because, why is it not working? Let's go back and make sure we're reminding ourselves. So remember, this only gets called, this get school schedule stuff, if this loop happens. But there's this breakout of like returning an empty list if this is a break for everybody. So in order to even get to this condition down here, where it's a break for a particular student, we need to have a second student, and then we need the school break to only apply to the first student. So I think that we can do that pretty quickly by saying we need another enrollment factory call. So we're going to enroll another student, and we're going to give it to the same grade level. So that should put a second student into this. And then the thing that we want to do to complete this is to make sure that this particular school break only applies to the current student. So the student is right here. And so we want to say school break students add student. So now we're in the condition where the school break has been focused in on this singular student. And I think it should mean that we will get through this this guard clause. It won't hit that return of schedules. It's going to go into the for loop, which means it's going to go into this method, and then finally calculate that a school break is only going to apply for one of them. Now, as I say that though, I think what we're going to have is that this is now going to be a list of 2. So this is still going to fail because the schedule will now have 2 in it, and one will have a break and one won't. So we'll have to account for that. Just to make sure. Yep. That is, so here are the 2 students. Here's the break day for the first one that we created, but we're going to have to also get the second one. So let's do that. Let's copy this. And I guess we really need, what do we need? Let's say the other enrollment. And then we can do the other enrollment student. And then this is not going to be a break. So this is the exact mixed mode setup that we've been working through, and you just saw in the template stuff. It's now codified into this test. And that should give us the coverage. So let's run this coverage report again. Make sure that that we're happy with the result. The other thing I've been thinking about, so earlier in the stream, we started kind of with a PR, pull request, GitHub, showing all the changes that have gone into the last few streams. And I think although this change technically has like no impact on anybody's user experience. So if I deploy this out to the main site as is, it wouldn't hurt anybody's site. because there'd be nothing in the many-to-many table. So all the school breaks would be treated the same way as they are currently. However, I don't think I necessarily want to deploy this yet. I probably would rather deploy it all at once. So before we merge the pull request, we'll probably continue to do the work on it and do that editing, work on that create page and the edit page on the next stream to actually finish this off. And it'll package up the whole thing. And then we can talk through, there's a bit of a marketing aspect to this as well. The website, if you've never used it, or I doubt you've used it, most of you are probably new to the stream, but this is the website, School Desk app. There is a product blog that goes with it. And I can use the blog as a way to communicate to the members of, hey, there's a new feature. So I have a handful of members, and rather than emailing them or reaching out to them directly through support channels, I have a mechanism built in the application that if I write a blog post, I can then notify them in-app that, hey, there's a new feature you should check out. And so this will be a good thing to wrap up for that, and kind of put the whole thing together, because I think that will be an exciting feature that they will care about. All of that ultimately leads up to field trips, which is the whole basis of all of this stuff. I'm not going to get into that. That's a different thing that has been desired, and I'm going to use the school break model as the basis for field trips. But that's future work. Anyway, that's where we're going to stop for the evening. I appreciate y'all joining in. I appreciate the good discussion. Hope you learned something. And if you want to catch some part of this or want to catch previous streams and see other things that I've done in this app was created on this stream, and like I started this project from like square one. I haven't done every bit of code on this particular stream, but a lot of the work that has happened on this app has gone in this stream. So there's a lot there if you want to dig into it. It's a lot of content, so I understand if you don't too. But I want to thank you. The content goes up to YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at search for Matt Lehman, and I'm up there. You can find me on Twitter if you want to follow me there. I'm MB Lehman and on the internet generally. So you can find me on Twitch here, obviously, and GitHub and all those places. Thank you for joining in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Take care.